The following video is inspired by Mira's Jenny, the villain of K-pop video, and Everglobe's How Woojin became the villain of K-pop video. Links to both of these will be available in the end cards. Disclaimer: this video will be discussing accounts both mentioning and involving topics that include, but are not limited to, bullying, violence, IPV, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and death. It's completely fine to not be okay hearing about these topics. Just please click off of the video now if they make you uncomfortable. Also, Korean is a very difficult language to translate into English as context is very important. I will specify where I'm getting my information from in terms of translations, but please take everything that I say with a grain of salt. If you have any opinions and or evidence that contradict what I say in this video, you are more than welcome to express yourself in the comments. However, please remain civil about everything. Any comments that I see being toxic or hateful will be removed. This topic is sensitive enough as it is. Let's please be mature about things. Finally, I just want to throw something out there. A lot of people love stating that non-victims shouldn't speak about these topics. I don't like discussing it publicly because it's a very traumatic experience for me, but I am a victim. I have been one for 5 years, and assuming that someone isn't one just because they support a person who's been accused isn't a great practice. As a victim, I want both my story and those of others to be believed, and false accusations do nothing but harm the credibility of actual victims in the future. Thank you for listening through all of that. Now we can move on to the video. January 9th, 2019. Rainbow Bridge World debuts their newest artist, a 6-member boy group by the name Oneus, with the song Valkyrie. This group is following up acts like Kara, Mamamoo, and Wonwi. The members consisted of Soho, Lido, Connie, Wonun, Sion, and the oldest being Ravn. Right from debut, everyone could tell that this group was going to be a force to be reckoned with. Their discography was amazing, and their performing abilities were top tier. This was put on full display on Mnet's program Road to Kingdom, which aired back in 2020. All of that hard work finally paid off on November 17th, 2021, when the group received its first win on Show Champion with the title track Luna. – 2022 started off strong with the release of the album Trickster behind the title track Bring It On. And as the autumn rolled in, things just kept getting better. Their next album, Malice, was released with the title track Same Scent. And I can't get it back, no more, no more. It became their highest charting song on the Korean Circle Digital chart and earned the group another 4 music video show wins, being the only ones they've won since Luna. And just when things looked like they couldn't get any better, the unthinkable happened. October 14th, 2022, an anonymous Twitter user posted a series of allegations against Ravn. RBW released a statement on the following day, October 15th, 2022. In the typical fashion of a company doing PR, it basically stated that Ravn would be on hiatus while the company conducted an investigation into the allegations. About 2 weeks later, RBW issued a follow-up statement informing Oneus fans and the general public that Ravn had voluntarily left the group. That logically made sense, as South Korea is a society in which reputation holds a lot of value and it's very hard to recover it once it's lost. So regardless of the validity of the statements, it would be understandable that Ravn left out of fear that the group would suffer if he had remained. But that wasn't what was unsettling for everyone. Let's look at the accusations themselves. These accusations were posted by an individual alleging that they were an ex-girlfriend of Ravn and that they'd been a victim of his actions during their relationship. This is not K-pop's first time going through a situation like this though. Starting in 2019, several idols had become the victims of false accusations. Some of the more prominent idols that most think of include, but are not limited to, Wonho, former member of Monsta X, Kim Woojin, former member of Stray Kids, Shin Jimin, former member of AOA, So Soojin, former member of Idol, and Kim Garam, former member of LE SSERAFIM. Every single one of these cases were proven to be false, and some are still involved in legal proceedings to ensure that the idols receive justice for having their lives nearly ruined beyond repair. Not only that, but last year saw similar allegations raised against NCT member Lucas Wong. An individual came forward claiming to be a girlfriend of his, and that Lucas was also guilty of being a terrible partner. This case is far from resolved, as Lucas has been on hiatus with no updates from his company SM Entertainment. That being said, the accusations were still fresh in the general public's mind and only harbored more skepticism towards the accuser. Side note, photos have currently been circling online of someone claiming to be the person that made the accusations towards Lucas, and that they're admitting to lying as well as apologizing. I can't confirm the validity of these and whether or not this is genuinely the person who made the accusations, but it just does add to the fact that there's a lot of skepticism revolving around all of these idols and the allegations that get thrown their way. The accusations towards Ravn included, but were not limited to, the accuser allegedly being a victim of being gaslit, hidden from RBW staff, cheated on, visited while Ravn was supposed to be quarantined with COVID-19, deprived of promised gifts, threatened, and R-worded while inebriated. As you can see, these are some very heavy accusations, but the original poster, who I'll be referring to as OP from now on, also included some evidence to support their story. Amongst these were a few pictures to show OP and Ravn messaging each other, pictures of Ravn allegedly spending his birthday at her house, a compilation video of CCTV footage showing a man entering what is presumably OP's residence, and an audio clip that's supposed to be of Ravn threatening and manipulating OP. At first glance, this evidence is actually pretty convincing, but looking at it closer, a lot of this supposed evidence doesn't hold up. And this is where I'd like to put in another disclaimer. I can't definitively say as to whether Ravn is innocent or not. All I can do is explain to anyone watching this why the story and the evidence provided don't seem to be as solid as one would assume when they originally look at it. So yeah, it's ultimately a battle for Ravn and RBW to fight in the Korean legal system. I wasn't there. Presumably none of you people were there, so we don't know what's fact and what's fiction. But yeah, let's dive into the evidence that OP provided and just explain what doesn't seem to add up from my own perspective. Amongst everything else, OP also showed some pictures of charm bracelets or keychains or something. I'm not going to be touching upon that because, in my opinion, it's very easy to simply look up an accessory that someone's wearing and buy it for yourself. So I can't prove or disprove if this is reliable evidence or not without a receipt for the purchase to show something such as were multiple purchased at the same time to be matching, at what date were they purchased to see if it would coincide with maybe a day that Ravn had off or not. So that's something we will not be talking about. I want to start off with the transcripts that were provided by OP. I'll be reading off parts of them that were translated on Koreaboo's website. I'll put the entire transcript segment by segment up on the screen for you, and the article will be linked in the pinned comment as well, because it'll probably be easier to read it that way as opposed to constantly pausing the screen. I'm only going to be reading parts of it because some of the accusations are very repetitive and they get stated a number of times throughout the transcript, and not everything is as easy to prove or disprove as fact or fiction. For example, OP lists some things that Ravn allegedly promised to buy them. There was nothing tangible shown to prove whether these promises were actually made or not. So that's up to everyone's individual interpretation, and I really can't give too much input in terms of which way that leans. So with all that being said, let's get underway. You kept asking me to come over to see you, so I did, but I ended up getting caught by your manager and staff, so I had to hide in a small closet for an hour. Upon my first reading of this statement did make sense. We've seen idols being punished for their relationships being known by a company. The most famous example would be between the idols Yuna and Dawn. When rumors circulated that they were dating, their company, Cube Entertainment, immediately denounced the rumors. However, the couple proudly announced that they were in fact an official item. They were immediately removed from their company, so it's not unheard of for idols to be kicked out of their companies or face other punishments for dating. This is especially true as many companies have publicly known dating bans for rookies. Rookie being an idol that is within the first 2 years of their career from their debut date. But what if I told you that RBW doesn't have this policy? I tried researching if RBW did have any policies in regarding to whether or not an idol is allowed to date, but I couldn't find anything. What I could find were multiple interviews in which Mamamoo, one of the predecessor groups of Oneus from RBW, had expressed that they had never been subject to dating bans. These interviews actually go back all the way to 2015, when they had only debuted the prior year, meaning that they were still rookies when they conducted said interviews. According to the members, they never had a dating ban. Instead, they jokingly said that they were too busy with work to date in the first place. Given that Mamamoo never faced any dating scandals, I don't see RBW imposing bans on their future groups, like OneWe, Purple Kiss, and Oneus. We can even go a step further though. In a News One interview, the group was explicitly asked if they have a dating ban. Member Connie replied, "We don't emphasize on things like don't date," or "tell us if you are. We trust that each of us can take that responsibility." The members of Oneus were given the freedom to choose their own rules about dating. So if the members trusted each other and the company allowed them to date freely, why would Ravn feel compelled to hide his girlfriend from the RBW staff members? Remember how you didn't have a cell phone, so you wrote Naver emails using your iPad, and then around July 2020, you finally got your phone back, so you messaged me on KakaoTalk. This is less of something that I think is flat out wrong and more so something that just confuses me. If you look at Oneus' Instagram account, Ravn was uploading selfies throughout the months of May and June of 2020. If his phone wasn't returned until July, then he shouldn't have had access to one. Granted, I will admit that one could argue that he was using a company phone, but why would the company take his phone away? Because you got your phone back implies that it was taken. And if he had lost or broken his phone, I feel like he would have just gotten a new one. And also there is the argument that maybe OP got the months wrong. You would think that they would have some form of evidence to prove or at least look back on and make sure that they have the correct month and year. So this argument from OP just doesn't make as much sense to me. The whole time you and I were together, you used my place like a motel. When you'd eat with me, you made me pay because you were worried that your company would find out if you used your card and left track of what you've been doing. This brings me back to a couple of points I've already made. Why would Ravn be hiding his girlfriend since Oneus doesn't have a dating ban? Why would there be a problem with using his credit card? And speaking of which, like I mentioned earlier, where are the receipts for the things that OP bought for Ravn? When OP keeps doubling down on things like this that are easily disproven, It makes it hard to believe them. Also, talking about him using their residence as a motel brings me to my next point. At one point, you got COVID-19 and you needed to isolate yourself at your parents'. Even then, I know you broke the rules and went outside. You even came to see me. In fact, knowing that you were positive, you still stopped by my place before heading over to the hotel that your company booked for your quarantine. Let's talk about the CCTV footage that OP posted. Before I talk any further into this, I just want to point out how weird it is that the digital clock on the footage never changes. Even though the clips are short, the second display should at least increase by a second or two. But moving on, OP posted 5 clips of CCTV footage in a compilation. Keep in mind, these times are in with a 24-hour clock, which is why we can determine whether or not these times were in the morning or the afternoon. And we can see that it was a 24-hour clock because some times are written as either 0 being the first number when it should have been 12 with a 12-hour clock, or the numbers were written in the 20s when it would have been 10, 11 p.m. and so forth. As you can see, the person is seen entering the residence between the hours of around 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. on various occasions. The first thing that stands out to me isn't what's there, it's what isn't there. The footage obviously goes back to March of 2022. Both Ravn and Connie were diagnosed with COVID in the middle of May 2022. Oneus halted all activities on May 13th. Side note, it is getting colder outside and it's flu season. Please get your vaccinations and wear your mask when in crowded places, especially indoors, because COVID is still going around. Continuing. But if Ravn was going to OP's residence during his quarantine period, why is the entire month of May completely omitted from the footage? When you're accusing a public figure of anything, it's important to provide as much information as possible. And then let's take a closer look at the dates shown. I tried looking for any conflicts in Oneus' schedule where Ravn wouldn't want to forego sleeping the night prior and that there were 2 events. To a lesser extent, July 25th stood out to me because the next day, July 26th, is member Lito's birthday, and presumably Ravn and the other members would have wanted to have spent it with Lito. Even I will admit that Ravn could have potentially gone to OP's house to hang out for a while, and then slept in late and spent time with the group later in the day. But June 17th is much more concerning. On June 16th, 2022 at 10:55 p.m. Korean Standard Time, Oneus was live streaming while in a car on the way home. This live lasted about 25 minutes and ended around 11:20 p.m. Korean Standard Time. This didn't even show them arriving at their destination, being where they lived based on the name of the live stream. Why does this matter? That means that they presumably arrived home around possibly 11:30 p.m. if not later. Oneus then had to appear on K-Show the following day, June 17th, at 10 o'clock in the morning. This doesn't mean that you just get up at like 9 a.m. and head over. You need to get up, get ready, be on the set hours ahead of time, go to makeup and wardrobe, and look over scripts and performances and practice. There's a lot more that goes into appearing on these types of shows. Ravn would have needed to have gotten next to no sleep if they arrived home around 11:30 p.m., where I'm assuming is about when they would have arrived, if not later. Because after that, he would have had to have gone to OP's residence at around 2:10 in the morning, so about 3 hours later, spent some time there, returned home, and have been ready for a 10 o'clock schedule. He didn't even look exhausted during the day on the show, so it's hard to believe that he spent the middle of the night at his alleged girlfriend's place. I learned that LHY used to be a trainee and was introduced to you by your teammate. Your fans probably know this already, but LHY's Instagram profile picture is of a black cat. Her Kakao Talk profile is of Pikachu. she uses a fake fan account to drop hints about her relationship with you. She's going around saying she wants to destroy other ex-girlfriends, and I'm afraid LHY will eventually get to me too. I can't risk that because it becomes too dangerous for everyone. This is something that's been bothering me throughout the entire story, but I want to talk about it in this paragraph specifically. Throughout these allegations, OP referred to one of Ravn's ex-girlfriends as LHY. This person allegedly was knowable to OP as they engaged in targeting Ravn's other partners. Again, there's no tangible proof provided that this LH person did this, that Ravn had other partners, or that this person even exists in the first place. So I did a little bit of digging. OP gave some very specific details about what this person's accounts looked like. The issue is that they didn't give much to go off of in terms of finding said accounts. I decided to try and determine the identity of the individual and came up with two possible candidates. OP said that they were a former RBW trainee. Not every former trainee of RBW is publicly available online, but the ones whose names could have possibly matched this alias of LHY were Lee Chae-young and Jo Yuri. This is taking into account the relationship between their names after being translated into English lettering. So this was obviously not the most scientifically thought out method of identifying the individual. But neither of the accounts match the description that OP provided, so I'm not 100% sure that these are the person that OP is referring to. But again, I'm not even sure if the person that OP is talking about is real or not. But regardless, please do not harass either of these people or any other former RBW trainees for answers. If there are any former trainees involved in this situation, it's up to their own discretion whether or not they choose to speak up. And if anyone does, I believe the safest route for them to take would be to go through RBW and the company's legal team for all public statements. That's all that I want to talk about in regards to the Rin accusations because again, most of what OP stated was either conjecture or repetitive. Because of this, it's really difficult to make a case for whether or not the allegations OP made were true or not without further evidence being provided. And that is a common thread amongst a lot of the allegations made against these K-pop idols in that most of them have little to no evidence, because when you do make false allegations about someone and you try to include evidence, it's easier to disprove things, which is why I now want to move on to the non-written evidence that OP has provided with their statements. First, we have photos of Ravn allegedly spending his 28th birthday for Korean age at OP's residence. This was accompanied by a tweet that roughly translates to, "This year's birthday at my house." But fans were quick to point out the striking resemblance between these and some of Oneus' previous photos. Throughout multiple posts, Oneus is seen in the same environment, sporting a moss green couch up against a light gray wall with no decorations. Yes, that's not so unique that absolutely no one else could possibly have this setup, but it does seem oddly coincidental from my own perspective. Also, the photos are edited. Even I missed this during my first look at the photos. If you look carefully, the black areas on the photos that OP provided are actually markings that look like they were created using either a photo editing app or some of the editing tools that come with a photo app on a smartphone. I don't know what the laws are in South Korea, but at least in the US, it is illegal to manipulate any form of evidence. So what was OP trying to hide in these photos? The next piece of evidence is a little bit of a mess. OP uploaded a video displaying audio recording.
이름만 들어 지인도 안 만났으면 제발 그년이 좀 내 얘기 좀 안 했으면 죽여버려. 그냥 나 가서 때려치고 칼로 찔릴 수 너무 스트레스다. 그 정도로 나는 제발 나는
그것도 그렇고 그냥 연락 안 하는 게 맞는 것 같아. 미안해. 나 그냥 연락하지 마. 이제 그냥 차단할게. 연락하지 마. 번호 바꿀 거고. 그만해줘. 진짜 계속 연락 오면은 나도 회사에서 지금 그렇게 할 수도 있거든? 아니야. 끊을게.
This was allegedly Ravn's voice. However, some fans were quick to notice some issues with the audio itself. For starters, it sounds like multiple audio tracks are being clipped together. OP never specified whether or not this was intended or if they were actually supposed to be separate instances. But let's discuss how people came to these conclusions that the audio was in fact edited together. As you may know, I started my YouTube journey back in 2014 by making mashups. So I directly downloaded the audio through a Twitter to MP3 converter online and launched it using Ableton Live, which is the software that I use for making mashups. I'm not fluent in Korean, so I can't tell if the audio makes sense from a grammatical perspective, but there's more than enough for me to have my doubts on the validity of the recordings. The first instance comes in around the 7-second mark. The speaker's voice goes from clear to being affected by poor audio quality and it's very distorted. There's also a lot of background noise that wasn't previously there. There's also a noticeable clicking noise in irregular positions. This was all too familiar for me. When I'm not being careful in editing the audio for my videos, this can happen. It occurs when I'm trying to splice a sentence and don't fully remove a word before the second audio clip starts. And just to solidify the suspicions, fans put the audio through a spectrogram which measures frequency in audio. The patterns displayed some drastic changes in the frequency. Normally, that wouldn't raise much concern or skepticism for me. What did cause concern is not only the number of changes, but where they were placed. I'll place a screenshot of the audio file from my Ableton Live project, and I've color-coded it to indicate where I think there might be problems. The blue section is before the background noises are there. The red section is where the background noises are present, and the green sections are where I detected anomalies in the audio, mainly being things like those clicking sounds. As you can see, the frequency changes don't match up with what even I could hear from the audio upon listening to it a couple of times, and admittedly, I was trying to see if there was something that sounded off. So the fact that I only saw a few issues with it, but the frequencies were changing so much is a little bit alarming from my perspective. There are also volume issues with the audio. Even though I don't understand what's being said, I can recognize when a sentence is supposed to begin and end based on the pauses in the speaker's voice. Why is this relevant? Whenever I'm recording, I always start off speaking a lot louder than at the end of the sentence because my voice slowly exhausts while speaking and therefore I can't project as well. And this happens whenever I take a pause, end a sentence, and then start the next sentence. There's a noticeable spike in how loud I'm talking, even if it's unintentional. But in the audio clips provided by OP, the speaker's voice randomly fluctuates between becoming louder and softer during the middle of their sentences, and there isn't a noticeable pause to indicate that they had finished speaking and are moving on to the next sentence. And on top of this, they demonstrate an abnormal cadence when speaking. Again, there's no pausing between these sudden increases and decreases in speed. And then the last tangible thing that pertains to this case that I want to talk about isn't actually involved in any of the evidence that OP provided, but more so the people interacting with OP. And I'm not talking about like toxic fans or general public. I'm talking about two specific accounts whose names I'll put up on the screen for you because just like OP's, it's just a random assortment of letters and numbers. Some are capitalized, some are lowercase, so I'm not saying all that. But it does strike me as a bit odd that both of these accounts have been vehemently supporting OP, having similar account names, and one of them, the only people that they follow are both OP and any of Oneus's official accounts. The other one has been not only supporting OP, but actually have been posting anti-Ravn tweets since at least 2021, if not sooner than that. So, similar to some other cases like this that we've seen, especially with Kim Woo-jin, it seems like people were really against Ravn and were just waiting for him to screw up. We've also seen this with idols like Fatu of the group Black Swan, and that being a black woman, especially one with a darker skin complexion, she wasn't as openly welcome into the K-pop community as some people would have hoped or delude themselves into believing. And because of that, people were really hoping that she would screw up so they would have some reason to bash on her. And then when she was falsely accused of being a bully by her group mate Leah, everyone just came out with racial slurs and calling her names, and it was just a mess. So a lot of idols definitely have a group of people, even when they are still in a group, that really just don't like that idol. They wish there were a reason for the idol to be kicked out of the group or leave the group, or they just hold this hostility towards them, and I can't explain it. So when the idol does do something wrong, even if it's not proven to be wrong or not, or even if it's not proven to actually be something that happened in reality, they're still going to go with that story and run with it just because they can. And it justifies their hatred. You'll see a lot of people saying things like, oh, I always knew that idol was a bad person, or that they did something bad, or they just seem weird to me. But these gut feelings never had something to substantiate them with. So yeah, it does seem like two of the initial supporters of OP's accusations towards Ravn were people that were just waiting for his downfall and wanted an opportunity like this to spread false narratives about him. Anyways, that's all the input I have pertaining to the case with Ravn specifically. As of the recording of this video, which is on Thursday, December 15th, RBW has yet to issue any sort of a follow-up statement as to where they are in terms of researching the case, legal proceedings, what's happening. I will say though that the original poster has actually taken down their tweets, which I don't know if that was the company telling them to do so, if they did so of their own volition. We are right now in a time of a lot of confusion and mystery. That's all that I can really say about it. And then, like I said, I personally can't say whether or not Ravn is 100% innocent or guilty of these because, again, I wasn't there and I am not the South Korean legal system, which is the venue in which Ravn, his company, and anyone else involved in this case will have to consult in order to get the matter resolved. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up everything that I want to say. Again, when it comes to Ravn, I'm hoping that RBW puts out a statement sooner than later, especially because it seems like the original poster of these allegations has taken down their tweets, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, until then, everyone just remember that these cases are never as black and white as the accusers want you to see them as. They want you to just be completely deluged in your emotions that you forget about your logic when it comes to reacting to these. So just take a step back whenever these come out, take a breather, try analyze them, and if you just don't know for sure who's right and who's wrong, instead of this mentality of always believe the victim, which has led to so many of these idols having their careers nearly ruined, just step back and being neutral. There's nothing wrong with that. Anyways, until next time, stay healthy, happy, and hydrated. Thank you all for watching.